Hello, Hathaway Brown, Michael Bisher again, Upper School Math and Computer Science. And the first part of the workshop was what makes feedback effective. So, looking at a couple things. What can teachers do to make feedback effective? You can provide clear, tangible, prioritized feedback relative to your learning goals. You can talk to your students. You can teach students how to assess their own work and that of others. You have to disconnect the feedback itself from the grade. That's a big one. It's important that students who believe in the value of feedback, the value of effort, are open to feedback. If I had a nickel for every time I heard the word growth mindset over the course of this week, I would be able to retire at least a year early. And you should focus feedback on the most important areas for improvement, but then most importantly, you need to provide opportunities for students to act on that feedback. They can't just get the feedback, they have to do something about it. And for that, you have to allow some specific time for that to happen, class time and homework time. So here we go. More details on those. Clear, tangible, and prioritized feedback. All feedback is supposed to be connected to your learning goals. Make sure that it's all connected there. Those can be the specific content goals, or they can be softer goals like, how do you communicate your work? How do you do things like that? Students should be able to recognize what I'm doing well and what I'm doing not so well. And the positive to negative ratio there should be about 3-to-1 or 5-to-1, much more positive than negative. I think back myself to when we do course evaluations, and if I get 1 or 2 negative ones out of a group of 12, I'm focusing on those 1 or 2 negative ones instead of the positive ones. So it's important to have a good, solid positive to negative relationship in that feedback loop. Focus the feedback on the most important areas for improvement. If there's too much feedback, then they don't know which piece to act on first. So even if you have a lot of things to say, focus on the most important areas first. And then when you're correcting and offering feedback, instead of saying, well, I disagree, or you've got this, try to use a yes and framework. So find something that they did right. Yes, you found X, and now you need to find Y, rather than saying, oops, you forgot Y. So positive ways to look at those pieces. Students can self-assess, but they need to learn how to do it. You can talk to them to see if they have evidence that they're learning. Students can often verbalize things a lot more than they can in writing or under other methods. While we're online, video might be a good way to do that. Either live video when you're talking on Zoom, or something like a Flipgrid where they can give feedback to you verbally. Students do need to be trained how to self-assess and how to peer assess, what to look for and how to give feedback. And then decoupling the grades from feedback is an important piece. When you're giving comments, it needs to be separate from grades. We all know that if you give a piece of paper back with a grade on the top, students will look at the grade and very little else. So it's important when you're doing the formative assessment and giving the feedback that there's no grade that focuses on their attention. Checks, check pluses, check minuses, things like that are okay, but a grade focuses just on the grade and takes the focus away from everything else. And again, growth mindset. That's another nickel for you. The last piece, it's not the last piece, but one of the most important pieces is that it needs to count. Feedback and students' response to feedback needs to be important. Obviously, anything that we do in the classroom that we want students to pay attention to is something that we have to give them opportunities to do and credit for doing. So opportunities for students to act on feedback. If it's a math question, then, hey, under the formative pieces, fix this, communicate this better, draw your graph more accurately, do things like that. English and history when you're writing essays and things like that. I suspect most people are good at having drafts, but students have to have an opportunity to take that draft, take your feedback, and incorporate it. Make sure that happens. And class and homework time has to be just pieces of this. And beyond time, you have to hold them accountable for acting on it. If I say, hey, make sure that you draw the graph, that you graph the function accurately and put some points on the grid, and then the next time they don't do it, that should be something that costs them. And make sure that students know that that's coming, be transparent about them, and let them know how to self-adjust. A last bit is best feedback is timely, ongoing, and consistent. The timely feedback can be from a teacher, can be from a peer, can be from tech-based pieces. Things like, spell check is instant timely feedback that's tech-based. Or Khan Academy, pieces like that where you can test your work quickly. Ongoing feedback, it has to go on all through the year. To be consistent, your feedback has to be stable. You have to, give them the same. Don't say one thing this week and then say a different thing the next week. Tell them to do something opposite. Give them the same feedback as it goes on. It has to be accurate. It has to be something that is reliable outside of your specific context, and it has to be trustworthy. So that's an important part of building relationships and building a classroom community, which is one of the other pieces to look at on this week. And then the last piece, fact-based feedback is always better than judgment-based feedback. There are a couple of resources here. These are the two best resources from this day, in my humble opinion. And if you want to look at them, if you want to get at this slide, so you can click on those links, or look at all of the other pieces, you can go here, and it's all under Documents and Notes. If you want to watch some of the other videos from this week that I'm doing, click here, return to video menu. If you want the documents, if you want this presentation and the notes and links to all the documents, click there. Thank you very much.